You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanners. So, let's be friends. We're streaming a little later than normal as I've been out at a family event. That's why I'm dressed all fancy. But we're here to talk about a testing weekend for F1 viewers, from a pretty drawn-out, static sprint race to a delayed and finicky start to the actual Grand Prix. And I really try not to be super negative, because I think in podcasting that can sometimes be the cheap option. Let's just dunk on the subject matter. And there's going to be 100 podcasts calling F1 boring and saying the FIA handled it badly. And tonight we're going to make that 101 just to complete the set. But no, there's nuance to sport, because yes, it should aim to be entertaining, but if you only consider what the fans want, then you could end up being the Savannah Bananas baseball team, who I think are really cool. But maybe I don't want F1 to be that. We don't want it to just be entertainment. They are athletes, they're not clowns. But also, if you doggedly listen to the sporting side and what the players and the teams want, it can lead to, for example, losing many unnecessary laps of amazing wet racing, or having crazy overtaking rules. So it's a balance. I think the soul of F1 is, well, I was going to say the soul of F1 is in the balance, but I don't think it's too dramatic to say that part of the soul of F1 is being eroded, and today is a good example of that. But like I say, I don't want to open the show by just dunking on everything, so I'm going to have a specific segment later called Spanners Dunks on Everything. But aside from that, we'll discuss, could Norris have won that race, or was it a perfect innings from Piastri? Is wet weather racing dead? Is Spa losing its A1 status for F1 tracks? Did Lewis deserve driver of the day? What did we learn about Red Bull and Lauren Mecky's significant actions over the weekend? And who will win the thrilling battle for fifth in the Constructors' Championship? All that and more on this soggy episode of Missed Apex Podcast. We already had Maria in our patron chat saying, is this just going to be a Brit-centric episode? No. All the rest of the British panel are quite sensibly asleep already. So we've got across the Atlantic, Matt, two rumpets. Hello, Matt.
Pour one out for the wet setup, my friend.
It's gone, man. All the people who decided, hey, I can see the forecast, let's have a wet setup, just completely screwed over it. The same as Tsunoda in Brazil, who made the correct decision to go to wets. All the people who looked at the forecast and went, yeah, do you know what? We need some downforce and some clearance here. All of those people just got dunked on.
Yeah, I think my favorite social media post of the day was someone said, you might think you're useless, but imagine you could be a Pirelli full wet.
Exactly. Yeah. And so to make sure that this episode is not just me going, yeah, Piastri did fine. Now, how could Norris have won it? We have from Australia land our video guru, Steve Amey. Hello, Uncle Steve.
Hi there. And as far as I'm concerned, it can rain every race day.
And you're a proper Piastri fan, because I failed when I got a Dutch person on, and I found the only Dutch Lewis Hamilton fan.
Oh, no, I'm a Piastri fan. Good. I think the boy is a very good driver, and I think he's going to go on for many years, winning many championships.
I've got a couple of points on the McLaren battle. I think we'll start with, obviously, the battle between those two. I think McLaren are handling this battle superbly well now, especially compared to last season. And B, I'll start with you, Steve. From a Piastri fan point of view, there was a little bit of a danger of Norris momentum creeping in, and I think this was really needed to stop that charge.
I totally agree with that. I think that Lando had good momentum in the last two races, and I think that it was really imperative for Oscar to be able to sort of reassert himself, which he did very well. A very good race at this last race. And I think that if he hadn't done it, then Lando was maybe going to run away with it.
You could have seen the championship switch the positions, the lead. Sorry, it's late. You could have seen the lead switch positions, and I think that would be significant. Now Piastri is going, even if he finishes second before the summer break, he's still going to go into the summer break as championship leader. I think that's a really big deal.
Sure. And I think that after Hungary last year, Oscar will go into the next race with a very positive attitude. And I think having won at Spa, which is, he says it's his favourite track, I think that gives him a lot of positive energy to take into that next Hungarian race. I think he's going to be hard to beat.
Interesting start to the weekend with the sprint, and Piastri just seemed to completely slam dunk and get that 0.6 of a second lead over Lando Norris. What was interesting was Norris tried to downplay it. Yes, it's because I didn't get a tow because of the positions that we went out in. But I found it interesting that when Norris got the pole position, Piastri made a comment along the lines of, basically, it's been a long enough weekend that Norris has copied me. That was his post-qualifying interview, wasn't it? He goes, well, obviously, we both learn a lot from each other, but it does make it hard to stay ahead. Really heavily implying that basically Norris copied his homework, which is possible. So I'm really interested in this dynamic between the two drivers. How much data is being shared? How much of the strategy is independent? And how are they really managing this competition between the two? My feeling is, Matt, these guys are free to race. They have their own teams of strategists, but I would imagine they're not allowed to withhold information. That's probably going a bit too far.
Oh, definitely. That would be rule number absolute one, because at the end of the day, if you withhold that information from your teammate, you're damaging the team. And the team, as we have learned, now the team always comes first. Might not have always been that way, but it's definitely that way now if you want to keep on driving for him at any rate.
Well, it helps that they've got the constructors all but sewn up, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so they've got a bit of luxury there.
I was going to say, I did see a radio message from Behrman in qualifying where he was like, show me Ocon's telemetry right up to the point where I made my mistake. So I think it's actually a pretty common thing across teammates. So you thought I was going to go someplace different. But no, I'm actually reinforcing what Oscar said. And if Lando was behind, yeah, I would absolutely want to know what corners I'm losing out and what he's doing differently to see if I can find that time for myself.
Really difficult to pick between the two drivers this weekend. So you've got the situation where we don't really actually know what Piastri's pace could have been today had Norris caught up quicker. We had kind of honours even when it came to qualifying. Obviously, the big gap during sprint qualifying. But no, Norris did get pole. So really hard to pick out between the two. But it is Piastri who's come out clearly on top. Steve and Matt.
I'd just like to ask the question, did Lando win pole, or was Oscar smart enough to realise that at this track, actually being second is the way to go up the Kemmel Straight and then get the draft?
So it's the fourth least good pole, I think, on the circuit when it comes to statistics of people who've converted it. So it's got the fourth lowest conversion. I think that actually Piastri was visibly annoyed at not getting the pole, having been so far ahead in the sprint pole. That's interesting, though, unless he's just a really good actor.
Maybe he's a good actor.
He could be a really good actor. But Norris, that's what Norris said as well, post-race, saying, well, maybe next year it will be a race to the bottom. Who can put in a slow enough lap to not lose the front row, but stay in P2?
Well, I think Oscar learnt the lesson from Max. I mean, Oscar was in front for the sprint race, and Max got him in exactly the same way.
I tell you what, Matt makes his point. Live chat. Let me know. Do you think this was an incredible bluff by Piastri, who judged it exactly to make sure that he was in P2? I love the idea, but yeah, it would take some mega acting. Matt.
I was just going to go along with the idea that pole is often a poisoned chalice here at Spa. And given the fact that there was also a deployment issue with Lando's car, with the battery pack, it was really, we sort of could play, is there anything he could have done? And aside from just letting Oscar past him into turn one, I'm not really sure there's much he could have done to have held him off. He just didn't maintain as much speed through Eau Rouge, and he was just a sitting duck really at the end of that straight, but it probably would have been more or less the same if the shoe was on the other foot.
So I think he was a sitting duck, and I think Piastri had an amazing chance to get past him anyway in any circumstances. But it doesn't help that then you also had this battery issue. It looked like he got on the power maybe a little early out of turn one, and he was defending a ghost a little bit. And so you could credit Piastri for putting himself on the inside, but Norris certainly wasn't all the way over to the left. So you go, well, there's a bit of gamesmanship there, and perhaps Norris then in an unfamiliar position. I genuine question. In practice, do you see them accelerating out of non-ideal racing lines? Genuine question. Something that I now need to look out for. I know I tell everyone in our iRacing series to do that. Practice lap one as if there's always a car to one side or the other. So I don't know. And also it's wet. So it's a misjudgment. And that, I think, as soon as you saw that little wobble, you go, that's the Piastri's definitely going to get that. So also, I think with the restart, it wasn't the best option. So, hey, look, okay, what I'll say is, right, before I fire into this, is Steve, you can have the return if Piastri has an unlucky day or doesn't win, but I've got a list of excuses for Lando Norris that I'm going to start working through.
That's fine. You're allowed. I was being a little bit tongue-in-cheek about him wanting to be second, but only a little bit tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
Well, a smart racer would understand that and perhaps want to be second through there. But Lando's little wobble as he came out of La Source was the thing that gave him the momentum up behind him. That's for sure.
Yeah. Richie in the patron chat saying he fluffed La Source. Samantha saying, I'd love for a driver to be that smart, but surely it's too hard and too risky. Sejith says, I think it was deliberate. When have you ever seen Oscar that physically vocal? Interesting. But I will say, like, everyone focuses on the one weakness I pointed out with Piastri, which is in high deg situations, maybe he is not up the top level. But it wasn't a high deg race today, but we'll get into that. No one ever remembers that I say he's definitely better at wheel-to-wheel racing than Lando Norris. Like, I think when it comes to the actual battles and the actual lining people up and positioning, I do think that Oscar is the better racer. I've said that over and over, but no one ever drops in my DMs and says, just a reminder, you were right about that point, by the way, Spanners. Just a reminder how much I agree with you on that specific point. But I do think that Norris might have got that restart wrong, or the start wrong.
Well, he did, and I agree with you. I think that Oscar is just cooler in those kind of wheel-to-wheel situations. Maybe it's because he's done more wheel-to-wheel racing, during his, upcoming series, to get to Formula One than Lando did. But he just seems to be able to calm himself down, keep focused, and Lando tends to mentally wobble a little bit in those circumstances. And I think that's the big difference.
One thing that goes along with being not quite as good as looking after tires in incredibly difficult conditions is being better at warming them up. And one thing I did catch looking at radio messages, I do think that Oscar had his tires perfectly in the window for the start. And therefore he had more grip, better grip, and was able to literally just put more throttle down going up the hill. So that one I would absolutely happily hand to Oscar, but I will enrage you by saying I think personally in the dry part of the race, once they had the pit stops, I think Norris was demonstrably faster, and it was fortunate that the pit stops played out the way they did for Oscar.
Okay, go Steve. Steve's going to argue with you, which is going to send us down that rabbit hole, which is fine. We can go with that. Let's go.
Well, I'm just going to ask, was he demonstrably faster, or was Oscar demonstrably managing his tyres better? I mean, at the end of the day, the last two laps that Oscar did were down in the 145s, and that indicates heavily that he was saving tyre for when he needed it. And, I mean, we've seen him do this before. When he's got a gap out the front, as he's getting to the end of the race, he backs the gap back. I mean, he's one of those people that believes in winning the race by the smallest amount that you need to.
And they should do. Most modern F1 drivers won't hold on to a gap now. So if they've got a 10-second lead, they'll allow that gap to come all the way down so that they're using the minimum amount of tyre, and then they're ready to push when they want to. So just going to say this clear for the 100 emails, right, is that yes, you had to manage the tyres. That is very different from this being a high wear track or having to manage tyres that are going away. So here, yes, you had to be smart. He can stick to a lap time and not push in the high wear corners. That's not ever the thing I've been talking about. But he stuck to mid 46s, lap after lap after lap, while Norris was going, hey, I'm going to go hell for leather here. I'm going to push. I'm going to try and close that gap. And all that time I was wondering, would Piastri be able to go into the 45s like Norris was doing in between adventures off track? If that gap closes down, would Piastri be able to do it? And that question was answered, because when the gap closed, he did go into the 45s. He had that capability. But at the end of the day, you had two similarly paced drivers, two equal cars, and no deg and no wet. So that meant there was really very little opportunity for Norris to make a difference and to make something happen. And I think even if he'd have got into DRS range, it would have been a tough ask to get past down to the source. So I think me and Steve are both against you here, Matt. I don't know where you are finding evidence that Norris was faster. I think Piastri could have been just as fast. He just didn't need to be.
Well, I'll start with the 45. Since we were all talking about 45s, Steve is absolutely right. He was able to run in the dip into the 45s around lap 42. He did it twice. Norris's first lap in the 45s was lap 28, then again in 30, then 32, and then from lap 35 on, basically, he was in the 45s. So that's one reason I would say right off the bat, I think he was faster. Not that Piastri needed to run in the 45s to exactly match his lap times, but if I'm giving away lap time, I'm not giving away half a second a lap if I can avoid it. The second reason is, this is a little in the weeds, but you foolishly scheduled this for so far after the race. I could go look at things I normally don't have time to.
Research, my Achilles heel.
Yeah. No, the Norris set a lap 19, a purple lap. It was a 46.344. Piastri lap 22 went purple with a 46.3. And then Norris came back and was even faster about 2 laps later. So I don't think he had quite the performance in the car. But to me, what really seals the deal and answers the question is that somewhere between lap 25 and 30, as best I can tell, he got a warning about his rear tires overheating. This would be Piastri. Lando did not get these warnings. And then going into the last laps, they actually said to him, hey, if you could lift and coast into the bus stop, into turns 18 and 19 or 17, 18, whatever they are, that would be kind of good for your brake temperatures. So I do feel like he was having to be more restrained. Like there was a limit from physics, tires and brakes, on how fast he could drive that car that Lando didn't have. And the reason is, and this is where I'm going to be really controversial, I think actually the hard tire was probably the better tire to go on to for the whole rest of the race. I think the mediums were slightly delicate. They got on them sooner than Pirelli said you should go on to them for a one-stop race.
I want to count it.
And yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, go.
Three cars out of the top 4 did 31 laps out of 44 laps on a set of mediums. That was not a delicate tire. That was fine. 31 laps around Spa is like 4,000 laps of the Nordschleife.
I'm not talking. I didn't say that it wouldn't go to the end. But if you look at when Lando started running straight 45s, I don't think the medium tire would have taken it at that point on Oscar's car.
Well, here's the other thing.
I think he had to wait longer.
Yeah, well, here's the other thing is that Norris wasn't as close as he might naturally or fairly have been without a few circumstances. So not able to push Piastri to the point where he was having to do those 45s for longer. But that's a complete unknown. So yeah, had Piastri been forced to do those 45s, would he? And that's not to say that he would have lost from that point. It might have just made it the more sensible decision to go and pit for another set of mediums, and then it would have been Piastri the one hunting.
Aside from Hamilton, were there even overtakes in this race? I mean, I think Norris could have caught him all day long. I'm not sure he could have passed him.
Yeah, no, that's my feeling as well. That this was doomed for Norris, and he at least tried. So he tried something by going a step harder. But the hope there is that you put enough pressure on that Piastri has to wear his tires and come in, and then you defend the position. And that wasn't on because of how far back he was. And then the other thing he had to do was actually go flat out and take risks, which is why he had a couple of locking events into turn 1, and he went off at Pouon as well.
I mean, conveniently, not only did he lose so much time staying out an extra lap from Oscar instead of them double stacking the cars, but his pit stop took a suspiciously long time.
They just made a mistake. That happens all the time. Come on. I've seen so many conspiracy theories about McLaren favouring one driver or the other. Oh, they're bowing to pressure from Mark Webber. Oh, they'll do anything to let their golden boy Norris win. I actually think, I don't think McLaren are doing that at all. They just seem like the nicest people. Am I misjudging them? Like, they just seem like the nicest team. And last year, they tried to do everything as fairly as possible. And then I think they realised, oh, that means that we have to actively kind of manipulate things. But I think this season, I'll just finish the point, that just this season, they seem to go, no, let's have a system that allows them to race fairly, and then we'll stick to that system.
Yeah, I don't know whether they're the nicest team on the grid.
Stella, Uncle Andrea.
But I can't think of another team that would handle this situation better than they're doing at the moment. I mean, I can't see Ferrari or Mercedes.
Well, we've seen Mercedes try, haven't we?
Well, we haven't seen it yet, but it might happen in the future. But I think McLaren have been fair and equitable with everybody so far this year. There have been a couple of occasions where they've done things that have favoured Lando more than Oscar, and they've done a couple of things that have favoured Oscar more than Lando. I think, over the course of the season, they've been pretty good.
Well, the big surprise was the fact that Norris was even allowed to go onto the hard tyre and try something different. They're like, hey, you know what? I think, actually, seeing as he's blinked and gone onto the medium, he's got the advantage of the pit stop first, but we've got the advantage of seeing what he's doing and doing something different. And this is such a departure from what we saw with Mercedes, where they would never let them. It would be this crippling fear of being seen to be biased or unfair would lead them to be, right, we can have no difference in tactics. And also, when they were out leading, they do things like, hey guys, come on, stay off the curbs. Oh, we've really got to fuel save. Let's just hold position. McLaren are openly saying this is a battle between our two drivers under these rules. Richie just says in the chat, McLaren don't care. They have a constructors and they don't care who is champ. There's a difference between don't care and don't mind. I think they're caring about the championship battle, but not, favouring one driver or another. And Kieran suggests that Lando is Zach's boy and Oscar is Stella's.
Well, I like that hedging because I had the same thought, but I think the hard tire was simply an offering to Lando because they kept him out. Because if you remember what happened at Silverstone, the people who came in early for the slick tires lost out massively. And I think there was still some concern amongst a lot of the teams, not all of them. Some of them just completely screwed up. But for mostly, I think a lot of the teams were like, if we double stack and we're wrong, we've thrown away all of our chances. But then when it became obvious, he was 8-9 seconds back when they were practically within a second of each other when Oscar pitted, they're like, oh yeah, we've actually cost him a lot of time by hedging, but we can make it up to him by giving him a tire choice we normally wouldn't. Although some people say the tire choice too was a hedge.
Well, I got to agree that, I'm surprised that the teams jumped in and took the slicks as early as they did. It caught me by surprise. I was expecting another couple of laps at least.
I was the opposite. I was like, come on, get in.
I felt so good because I sat there and I looked up and I said, oh man, they should bring Behrman in because he's on the high downforce setup and put him on slick tires because he passed Ocon. So he clearly had pace and he went by, but then Hamilton came right in and went on the slicks and it was like, yes, I was right.
I feel like the lap before might have been perfect. We obviously will never know, but when Hamilton came in, it was completely fine. It was like there was no element risk. It was completely fine, which means there's a chance that an even earlier stop would have been good. And then so Piastri's probably one lap late from the ideal, and then that means Norris is potentially 3 laps too late on those intermediates that were just dead in the water. I don't know. I don't blame them for that. Double stack on the surface of it seems really unfair. Oh, sorry, Norris, we're going to turn your 1 second behind into 5 seconds behind. That's unfair. We'll just let you go around again, and just underestimated how much of a disadvantage that would be. That doesn't feel like anything. That's just a perfectly understandable mistake. But it is an excuse. So that is an excuse for Norris. That does count. That's like excuse number, what have we got here? 5? Excuse number 5. I want to start my first of my complaints on the FIA here, though.
Okay.
Because a standing start probably would have given Norris more chance for something to happen to Piastri having to defend against somebody. The standing start was overall like more something that even if he'd have got on the wet side of the track and the wet grid spot and Piastri had got ahead, that probably would have been an advantage to Norris in the end. You'd have the long drag down the Kimmel Straight. But here's the thing that is enraging me, and I just saw it from an Adam Cooper tweet, was that the extra 2 laps under the safety car was race control deciding whether or not it was a disadvantage for the cars on the wrong side of the grid and it was going to be too wet. We lost 2 laps of perfect intermediate racing conditions while they went, should we do a standing start because the grid is wetter on one side? It's unbelievable, Matt. Such little precious, exciting racing to be had this weekend, and they threw it away.
Leaves, trees, forests. It might have been a disadvantage, but it was a much bigger disadvantage for all the people who chose to go with a wet setup for today, because it really limited the number of laps they had the advantage. I mean, they bet on wet. I think Max bet on wet, Sainz bet on wet, Antonelli definitely bet on wet, the Behrman bet on wet. Like a lot of teams went with a higher downforce setup in anticipation of having to do a fair amount of running on an on-dry track. And as it turned out, that was maybe 10 laps, and I think it just, they could have run 1 lap and done a rolling start. They could have done 1 lap and done a standing start when it was more equal between the sides. And just by trying to be perfect, they threw away a whole lot of good, in my opinion.
Yeah, make the call. So you don't wait 2 laps worth, 2 agonizingly slow safety car laps of Spa-Francorchamps trying to make that decision. That was painful. At some point, you've got to make a call and go with it. I mean, two laps to assess already felt kind of excessive, but the first lap you're getting a sighter, then you have to make the call for the safety car to come in. That all takes a certain amount of time. But the anger that I felt that those 2 laps we were sitting there was just the choice between standing and rolling start. You got to just make a call. If it's a standing start and someone's got a sporting disadvantage, that's just sport. Sometimes that just happens. They're not doing that on purpose. They're not doing it because Norris is on one side, or if they are, that's pretty weak race controlling. But you kind of go, right, if we think it's going to be a standing start, let's just get it going. Let's get going. Don't waste 2 laps of intermediate running.
Look, I feel a little sorry for the F1, and I'm a vociferous F1 critic. I think they make all sorts of terrible decisions. But in this case, you've got to kind of look at them and say, well, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. If they had said, let's go early, and suddenly it was a little too wet and cars were spinning off and dropping way back to the back of the field, they would wake up this morning, my time, and there would be criticism left, right, and centre of them. As it turns out, they waited too long, and they woke up this morning, and there's criticism left, right, and centre of them.
Yeah, but they didn't just wait. It's not like it was a lap too long. Yes, we got these 2 laps, but it should have started like 30 minutes before that anyway.
Sure, I'll agree with that. It should have. But once they decided to let it run, then they were never going to get it right, but for everybody.
And according to Verstappen, who just happened to be on apparently a really full-on wet setup and is probably the best driver in wet conditions, according to that driver, they should have just carried on driving the first time when it was really wet. I can see Max going, no, this is definitely fine. We're 100% safe because of this setup and my particular skill set. So I'm not like as angry about the first red flag. You kind of go, well, they've made a decision. I'm angry about the fact that they've done nothing to solve this visibility issue at all. They tried one thing that didn't work and just gave up.
I mean, I hate to be Eeyore over here, but it's not solvable with this regulation set unless they resort to like fighter pilot kind of heads-up display technology using who knows what sort of technology. every time I suggest a technology, someone who actually knows about it says, well, yeah, but actually in that kind of conditions, it might not work. But there's got to be a technology out there we could leverage to let the drivers see where the cars ahead of them are in that kind of weather. And that's really what you need.
A massive rain flashing light. So they have to have just orange neon flashing lights on each wing mirror.
Is it going to be any better next year? With the change with aero regs, is it going to be easier to race in the wet? Because one of the things I really miss at the moment is a damn good race in the wet.
Steve,
it will be.
We're going into my complaints list, but yes, you're absolutely right. Wet races are a core part of Formula One, and we've lost them, and it's really sad. And apparently, it was down to the drivers complaining in Silverstone, saying that they thought they'd started it a bit too early at Silverstone, and when you had Hadjar crashing into the back of Antonelli. So they said, okay, well, in that case, we'll the other way. So, yeah, they're having internal conversations, but also, I don't care what the drivers and teams want. They've got way too much power, and it feels like, race control is listening to them a little too much, maybe.
Well, I'd agree with that. From a technical point of view, wet races used to be difficult for drivers, but then that's why they're paid lots and lots of money to be able to drive in difficult conditions. And the cars are safer now than they have ever been. So there is less safety reasons for them not to race in the wet.
Is it too cowboy to kind of go, well, Hadjar and Antonelli were both completely fine. Like they weren't in any danger in that particular. Well, obviously if things go wrong, things go wrong. But in that situation, both of them were 1,000% completely fine and not in danger.
Yeah, it's a fine line. But, as I say, the cars are very, very, very much safer than they have ever been. So we should be able to push the envelope just a little bit.
Yeah, and there is a difference, though, between difficult and impossible. Like at the start of the race, Leclerc was like, I can't even see the switches on my steering wheel. It's so bad. Okay. You can't tell me to change them. I've told you this, and you've not taken it on board. He had a whole complaint. But I'm also just going to remind everybody that I think one of the reasons they were particularly cautious here is 2019.
Of course. Yeah, no, you can't overlook that at all. Like I said, about the first one, I have not really got a problem with that. I was expecting it to get red flagged for those conditions. Then dithering to get it going and not being willing to start in intermediate conditions. So I think in an ideal world, you should be able to go round and race on the wet tyre. You say it's not going to happen in this regulation set. However, there was heavy intermediate weather that you think, well, that would have been good racing on a drying track with no more rain forecast. And the fact that the intermediates were ripping to shreds even on the outlap was just teeing up this delicious potential race. And they did. I am angry about the squandering. I think they lost 40 minutes of that conditions.
Yeah, and you do ask yourself, why is there not some sort of objective, measurable standard here? Because you've got a race like today. But then I can think back to last season to the utter madness of Brazil, where they're driving around on completely incorrect tires and people are just crashing every other lap. It seems like to me that some thought should go into a more readily deployable standard that says, at this point, we will race. And at this point, beyond that point, we absolutely will not, just to be fairer about it and less subject to what the whims of the drivers and the teams are.
Next complaint, is a rolling start that much safer than a standing start? You've got them entering the pit straight at much faster speeds. They were all coming down there into turn one at much faster speeds than they would have been. So from a standing start, they're going into La Source very slowly.
Yeah, but at least with a rolling start, you're not likely to have anybody stalling in the middle of the grid and causing those sorts of, everyone's up and their engines are at least slightly warm and their tyres are warmer than if they'd been sitting still on the grid.
Okay, I just watched the 1998 start where 14 cars crashed because I just wanted to show it to my son. And he was just, the moment he thought it was over and cars just kept piling in from the rear. But that, again, relatively slow speeds in F1 terms. Everyone was all right. When Grosjean clattered everybody, everyone was all right then as well. So They were both standing starts with a lot of crashes and everyone was okay.
It's a great question, but they didn't skip the standing start because of safety reasons. They skipped it because of sporting fairness reasons, remember?
That kind of makes it worse. All right.
Yeah.
Next complaint, not solving the spray issue, we've done that. Not starting with the original start, I'm not too unhappy about that. Pirelli, way too conservative, Matt. Even after last year, when a one-stop was nearly on, instead of going a step softer, they actually went a step harder by they're making the hard harder.
I'm going to remind you that they skipped a step. And the reason they did that was because they figured it was about a full second between going one stop on the hard tire versus having to do a two stop with a medium soft medium combination. So that theoretically brings the total lap times very close to each other, gives a lot of strategic flexibility. And for teams that aren't fast, they can bet on the one stop and protect their tires. For teams that are fast, they can just, burn it down and make lots of overtakes. The rain, however, cashiered almost all of that. But I did catch a quote from Isola where he said, we actually learned a lot about that, and it's going to be very useful going forward into making tire selections. So what I take away from that is we're going to see more of these interesting tire selections meant to compel alternate strategies that are almost the same lap time across a Grand Prix.
I didn't hate the fact that they're trying to do that they're trying something. I always like when they try something and go, let's see what kind of difference that makes. And yeah, good on them for doing that. There's some chat about the rolling starts in the Patreon chat, by the way. Patreon.com/MissedApex. It's what keeps it here. This is why my family do not mind at all that I am here past midnight still waffling on about a race that happened hours ago. But yeah, there have been rolling start crashes, by the way. Do you remember when Bottas made everyone crawl to the start-finish line and just didn't go until the start-finish? Was that Hungary?
Is that Mugello you're thinking of?
Oh, in Mugello, yeah. And then everyone smashed, all the rookies at the back smashed into each other. And there was one here that Grosjean crashed into 3 cars in the pit straight as well in 2002, according to Mia. So I don't know. I'm thinking everyone starting from zero is just as safe. Obviously, then you think, well, into the dangerous bits, they're a bit more single file. But standing start every single time. Never, ever do a safety car restart ever again. My phone blew up with people expressing expletives at the rolling start. No one likes them. No one cares. Never do it again. Probably too conservative. Oh, here's one for you, Steve. The drone footage on the world feed, the bit rate was too low. And they kept going on about, this great drone footage. Bit rate was too low. It was garbage.
Yes, it was. And that's not the end of the garbage about it. Their choice of where to put it and use it is just woeful. I mean, drone angles are something I have a particular interest in. And if that's the best they can do, then save themselves the money and the angst and don't bother. With modern drones that are programmable, you can set them up to fly the same path every time. They'll do it, repeat it time after time after time. There is no excuse for parking a drone above the bus stop S's and just looking down at huge height at 2 little ants going through the curves. You've got to be more dynamic with your choice of shot and how you use the moving capability of that drone. And I do understand that there is a safety consideration issue here. You don't want a drone suddenly failing and falling onto the track on top of cars at high speed. I understand that. But if you haven't got a drone producer that can come up with better suggestions, what they showed this time, don't bother.
I don't think a drone's going to be any less dangerous than a groundhog or a beaver. What was on the track in Canada?
Or a helicopter, yeah.
Yeah, or a helicopter, or like you've got whole racetracks with wallabies just bouncing around the track in Australia. So I have a dream, though. We have a karting event, and Steve, you're a drone operator from Australia operating a drone in our kart event.
Oh, that'd be good, wouldn't
it? Yeah, that'd be all right. But for anyone who doesn't know, Steve also does all the production and the tracking and video switching and everything for our iRacing series. So go and check out Missed Apex Motorsport on YouTube. We cancelled the one coming up on August 1st because we realised everyone was on holiday. But we have had 2 rounds, 1 round already for this season, and we're going to have several coming up for the rest of the year. What else are we? not showing the footage for Lewis Hamilton's track limits. I'm not disputing that he went off track limits and got his qualifying lap deleted. I was really unhappy about that because he seemed to have pace. He was on the same pace as Leclerc, got that deleted. And look, I know that there's just a referee that's made a decision, but I'm also happy to go along with the gnashing of teeth as well. And they show the onboard, and you can't tell anything from the onboard. You can't even see the rear wheels. And then the commentary was kind of going, "Oh, wow, we've seen secret footage that means you should all shut up." And you go, "Oh, well, then we can't play because we can't see the secret footage." But the secret footage is out there. And the interesting thing is, it is not what we would want. Like if there's a spot where they go, "We're looking at track limits here. We're going to point a camera that gets a clear kind of almost top-down view." And you can see it's not that at all. It was a nearly side-on camera, and it's just the normal CCTV from the track. And I looked at that and I went, I don't know how you can make you can't make a judgment on that. You can't see where the wall of the tyre is overhanging. And I did some digging, and I'm asking people, well, is it the outside edge of the tyre? So if it's squished, does that make the tyre further wider? Or is it just the contact patch? So then you've got to somehow detect exactly how much pressure is on the tyre and where the rubber starts eking away as you get to the outside of the tyre. And I don't think anyone knows.
Oh, I'm certain no one knows. And I think I know what you're talking about. But I do believe probably the image that if that was the one the stewards actually used from CCTV, it was probably much higher resolution in the steward's room than got sent over somebody's phone where always stuff gets compressed and so on and so forth.
You can bet your bottom dollar that's true, man.
You can, but also it's not a bespoke solution where they've gone, "Hey, guys, I really think that we should be monitoring turn 3. Therefore, let's set up a camera here that gives you the front." Oh, come on. Or even just a little bit higher.
You're missing fan engagement. If you watch tennis, they always show you like where that shot spotter winds up on the line, and just putting that out there. I mean, I understand people will argue yes or no, but it gives us something to talk about that's concrete. Everyone can look at the same thing, and we can argue, well, look, if you drew a line down, and you'd be like, no, but the contact patch, and we could just go on for ages about that, right?
Even if you had the perfect video footage, we all still get to argue about it. That's fine. But yeah, at some point, a referee has got to make a call. And so I'm completely fine with that. To be clear, I'm not arguing with the track limits penalty for Hamilton. If anything, I'm just frustrated with Lewis. String a goddamn qualifying session together, please, because he was good. He was good this weekend.
In his absolute defense, I think they did something new with his brakes.
Yeah.
And he only had one practice session. And it got alluded to, I think, after in his post-race interview. And he needed more time to really adjust to how they were working. And it just, as far as in the top of that hill, man, how many iRacing off tracks have I collected?
Oh,
there?
yeah,
it's
a
just
billion.
So easy to do.
With the sprint qualifying spin, though, and this is like full armchair driving coach talking about a 7-time world champion. The more I watched it, it really did look like he was just braking too much for the steering lock that he had on. And okay, that is explained if you've got a new braking system that you're not used to, sure, but still, it's too much brakey with too much turny.
Two things. It's the engine braking of the Ferrari has been a real challenge for him to get on top of in terms of how to downshift and not jerkily transfer too much weight forward or backwards. You already mentioned the new brakes. But I wouldn't even say he's braking too hard. Fundamentally, either he'd chosen the wrong brake shape for that corner.
Yes, that's
what engineers chose it for him, or he just had the brake balance incorrectly set. It was too far rearwards, and he probably didn't know that. Again, because these are new brakes, and you're right into sprint quali. You don't get 3 full practice sessions to dial this stuff in.
Oh my God, Justin just won the track limits debate, by the way. Why not just repurpose the AWS X centimeters from the wall replays and technology to do the track limits? Yeah, how come they can tell exactly how close they were to a wall? Get AWS on it, because that's real, right? The AWS graphics is not just Derek going, I reckon that was about 1 centimeter away from the wall. Throw the graphic up. That's completely real technology, true, right? So
it's an AI Derek.
Yeah, it's an AI Derek. Okay, you win, Justin. Yeah, just use that. Yeah, and Erica says there's also a new performance engineer in his team as well. That doesn't take away from the fact that Hamilton's qualifying has been off for a long, long time. So if that was a one-off, you kind of go, yeah. But he's not nailing qualifying. He's putting himself at a disadvantage. And no matter how good he looks on race pace, we don't really know. Leclerc had a completely different race to him, and he looked great by the way, he did look great on the intermediate tires, cutting his way through the field. These are cars he would be expected to overtake, but he was finding different lines. He was overtaking in unusual places, and it was great.
I got to say that I like Sajith's comment in the chat, and for the track limits, and that is, if the drones are no good shooting the actual track, why not park them at the particular spots and use them to shoot the
I don't know how much
off-track shots.
Well, I don't know how much a drone is, but I'm thinking less than
Not
just
that much.
a camera on a stick, a well-positioned camera on a stick. It doesn't feel like it's that hard. I can't believe the images that that we saw. And that is actually the end of my complaints. So there wasn't that many.
That's a short list this weekend.
No. And at least we did the McLaren battle first. So we did all the excuses for Norris, didn't we? So I think it's now time to focus in a little bit down the field, unless you've got something burning a hole. No, Matt's shaking his head. So Red Bull. Verstappen, I know Stuffy did the sprint review. Great job by Stuffy. I was on wife's birthday duties. But yeah, Verstappen, great job in the sprint review. I think the team did amazingly picking that low downforce setup and just identifying like, hey, actually, in a sprint format, skidding around on the tyres isn't going to lose us the race, and that low drag is going to be, A-okay. It's going to be spot on. So that is just team smarts won them that sprint race, but it didn't go so well today, Matt. And I think, partly he's got messed over by, can we put it all down to he had a wet setup and the race directors took away the conditions that he correctly prepared for? That's how it feels. He made all the right choices.
Yeah, I think you could, in fact, do that, with the caveat that there were definitely teams that did not bet on a wet setup and went with a more aggressive, we think it's going to dry out setup. So within the boundaries, if they chose wet, they lost, but it feels they lost somewhat artificially compared to when the race we all kind of agree should have started sooner. He should have had a few more laps. But they were having issues with clipping in the race. They were having issues with front locking in the race. And a lot of this probably is down to the fact that when they went onto the slick tires, they really couldn't make the setup adjustments they needed to get those tires working correctly. And we saw it up and down the grid, not just with Red Bull. So I know my wife always enjoys listening to Max complain on the radio. She's like, he complains about the car all the time. But I have to say he was pretty much right on with his complaints about the car this time. And the team after the race said, pretty much that's what happened.
Yeah. It is unlucky in these conditions. You've got to make a call. You've got to make a choice. And it's unlucky, but I can see why he's frustrated.
But that's not what I really want to talk about.
Is it Red Bull related? Because I've still got some Red Bull things.
Oh, yeah, it is Red Bull related. And it's new team principal Red Bull related.
Yeah, Lauren Mekis, he's my new favorite team principal. Can you guess why?
Because he walked in the door and said, excuse me, why are we putting Yuki out on a floor from like 2003 when we have 3 extra floors sitting around in Max's spares department? And so they didn't have all the parts. He didn't get the full Max car today. But he did get the floor upgrade finally, and they gave him the floor upgrade, and then immediately in qualifying, there he is in Q3.
I mean, that is the stark difference between not really being able to get out of Q1 and suddenly being a Q3 car. So Mekis has come in. He knows Tsunoda. They've got an existing relationship, and I wonder whether he's going, oh no, what have they been doing to my boy? Like, we can't have him going around on this old spec floor. There's a reasonable... Go on, Steve.
Sorry, I was going to say, Lawson also had a relationship with Mekis too, but Christian was there. Surely, there's a few drivers now who are scratching their head saying, Well, hang on a minute. If it was that easy to put a new floor on our car and give us some performance, why the hell have we been, sitting down the back of the grid for the last 2 years?
And I'm going to make you very happy. I'm going to go, and this is a known quantity of Red Bull. I can go all the way back to Mark Webber, not bad for a number 2 driver. Yeah. And you see this pattern happening over and over, and it's all a Christian Horner thing.
But I don't.
Mackey's clearly is coming at it from a different point of view.
But I don't hate that. I don't hate one driver being favoured over another, except in this case when it's been drivers I'm a fan of. So when it's been Perez and Tsunoda, suddenly then yes, I do object. But the argument, the why, Steve, is well, if Verstappen needs a new floor, that's the floor that we're gonna use rather than having it on Tsunoda's car. Now you could do the Mark Webber thing, and if he ruins his floor, take the floor from Tsunoda and put it on, and then he could do his not bad for a number 2 driver himself. Some people have been saying, well, he crashed. Did he crash at Imola whilst he had some kind of upgrade? And then that's the argument for not giving him upgrades because he crashes all the time. But, I don't think he crashes particularly more than any other driver. So I wonder what other parts. So Tsunoda had a bit of a difficult race, pitted far too late, but we cannot dismiss the getting into Q3 and being quite reasonable, much closer to Verstappen because he's got the same equipment. Now, I'm not going to name the Alex that insisted to me over the last 5 years that Verstappen always has the same car as his teammate, right? But he did. And I think we know now that that's not the case. That feels like case closed, Matt. No?
No, I think it is. There will have been times where they had mostly the same car, but generally Max got all the new stuff. And when he had a complete set of spares is what it's starting to look like. When he had enough spares for a full week and when production had gotten there, then and only then would the second driver begin to get any new parts.
So there'd be a huge lag.
It explains, an awful lot. And I did want to pick up on your pit stop point. 100% team mistake. That he was 9 seconds back of Max. The mechanics were in the pit lane with the correct tires. Not every team had the correct tires when their driver came in, but we can talk about that later. And they just called him too late. He'd already gone by the pit entry.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's 100% on the team and 0% on Yuki. So, and that exactly explains why he wound up where he did.
Does this not also explain why Perez would start the season relatively stronger compared to Verstappen than he ended up being? Because they would start with the same car, and then as upgrades came in, these spares as they're built, because there's a lag on manufacturing as well. So instead of going to the number 2 car, they go, well, here's Verstappen's spare, and then maybe by the time they've moved on to the next spec, then the number 2 car can get going. Now Horner, I think, is happy with that, and I think the one person who wasn't critical of Sergio Perez was Christian Horner, to the point that he offered him a new contract, which they had to then buy themselves out of. So I think Horner knew what was happening and was like, given what I'm doing, Perez is doing pretty good. Whereas you'd have the opposite camp with the Oliver
Mintzlaff.
And was Helmut Marko in that camp? Would you say he's in that camp as well? So it was Marko who was always criticizing Perez and the second drivers as, that's a bad choice from Horner. I think Horner was perfectly happy with that situation. Oh, man. So I love it. It turns out I've been correct about this for the last 5 years. This is a great feeling. Alex is doubling down and saying that he never said that they had the same car, but he's not here to defend himself, which is great. So we can just carry on.
And he couldn't defend himself anyway, because he's been saying it for a long time.
He's been saying that for years. I just feel I'd love to know more, but Mekis has come in with just a different attitude, and he's made that one decision, and it's made a big change straight away. Going down the grid, I think we covered Ferrari a little bit with Lewis Hamilton. Leclerc, go on, Matt.
Why are we even talking about drivers? Their rear suspension update worked.
Did it?
This is fabulous. This is amazing news. And it hasn't fixed the car in qualifying entirely. But you talk to Lewis, talk to Charles, the car is better. It may not be as fast as they want it to be, but fundamentally, they brought this big update they spent a lot of money and time on. They bet on it, and it looks like it might pay off. And that's only good news for us because the data they collected today, because it was a sprint weekend. So it's really kind of terrible to bring something this big on a sprint weekend. But they get 2 full races and a sprint race's worth of data to work with on the other side of the summer break. So yeah, first of all, nice job getting the updates to work. And then second of all, do we have to say something nice about Ferrari strategy today?
Okay, we're talking about the upgrades first. Firstly, you say it worked. Leclerc frustrated Verstappen, but on merit, it was the 3rd fastest car today. And there's no more upgrades on the way, according to chat. So I think the season's dead now for Ferrari.
It was the 3rd fastest car today, but there have been plenty of races where it hasn't been the 3rd fastest car. So you've got to take that as being a step forward. And look at Lewis coming from the pit lane. He had a good race.
Well, okay.
Third fastest, 2 McLarens, and then Leclerc.
Hang on.
Max said he was never going to catch him. Max said he only got close because Leclerc made that mistake.
The strategy put Hamilton a bit higher. So they gained a lot of places by pitting that 1 lap early. Plus, he raced well, but against cars that you would expect there to be a big delta to get up there. And even with all of that, and you're saying, oh, I don't think...
I will give you, he had a new power unit, but show me the overtakes from anyone else who started with a new power unit. Show me the overtakes. Show me 7 overtakes in the wet from anybody, even with that kind of a mismatch.
There have been plenty of races this year where Lewis has got stuck behind someone down in the midfield and hasn't been able to get past them. So I reckon it was a positive day for him.
Pit lane start, by the way, cancelled out because they had that rolling start, so he was able to just catch up. So I don't know. I can't believe you guys are praising the Ferrari car. I
like it. They fixed the fundamental problem they were trying to fix. And what more could you ask for?
Well, I don't know. Being a bit faster. What am I missing here?
They'll get there. You got to give them time to optimize. I mean, you see this. They bring the updates. They don't seem to work. A race or two later, suddenly there that is. It just takes time to dial these things in and really figure out how to get the most out of them. The fact that you put it on track the very first time and see an improvement, that is massive.
We've got Justin saying Antonelli had 5 overtakes and Alonso had 4, and they were both cars with new power
I did not ask for facts.
Hey, mods, can we do something about Justin here in the live chat? Also, I will point out that I always say intermediate conditions as the Inters start to wear, that is Lewis Hamilton's absolute best. So yes, these are cars that you would expect the Ferrari to be better than. However, I don't think anyone is quite as good on high wearing intermediates as Lewis Hamilton is. And again, if we'd have started that race earlier, they would have been forced to have the decision to change onto new intermediates as well. And that would have fallen into Hamilton's hands. Leclerc, though, did the job. And Leclerc did do his good qualifying and did, I think, do quite a robust job defending against Verstappen. Showed no fear, stroked it home into another podium. Like, Leclerc is doing great.
He's just getting on with the car better and better as the car itself improves. And I don't know. I think there's still some fundamental issues with Ferrari. Certainly the steering doesn't make Lewis happy, and that's not something they're going to fix. But he's got a podium out of this race, and I think there's still a lot of lap time left in that car to be discovered. So, and yeah, man, he left nothing on the table in qualifying and then followed it up in the race.
Does this go some way into saving Fred Vasseur's bacon this year? At least he's got a podium out of this.
Okay, so my gut response to that is every team principal is getting 2026, or at least the first half of 2026. And I think you can't kick anyone out because they're all looking forward to 20. Oh, mind you, that said, Horner's gone. So apart from Horner, who I think has a very unique set of circumstances.
What about Alpine?
Oh, so I've got rumors on that. So rumors going around the paddock is that Briatore is out by the summer. But Briatore isn't really a team principal. That's more on the business side of it.
Yeah, by the letter of the law.
Who did they sack? Who else did Alpine sack?
Oh, it was Oliver, what's his name? The Formula 2 guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Come to my brain. Come to my brain.
Come on, chat.
Come to my
Help
brain.
us out.
And when I say come to my brain, I'm saying
So,
come on, chat. Type some stuff in. Yeah,
So-
high sense.
So my thing of saying
Oliver Oaks.
My
Oliver
thing of saying you
Oaks,
can't dump a team principal before 2026 has fallen apart immediately with 3 very high-profile examples of how you absolutely can do that. However, I think no. Vasseur's come in and he's had just enough time to make it his team, and he will have been saying 2026 is the year to judge me on, and they will have agreed that, I'd imagine. And James Vowles, he's very clever. James Vowles, we can be terrible in 22, 23, 24, 25, 20. The cars can burn to the ground. We can literally burn Deralton money in the garden until 2026 and then judge me. And even if they do badly in 2026, he's still had a great job for the last 4 years. So, yeah, I don't think Vasseur's in danger of that. It's the same way as, Alonso's clinging on in there. Everyone is putting false hope in 2026, and at most only one of the people gambling everything on 2026 is going to win that. Yeah, so anyway, that's my answer to is Vasseur saved. I think he was saved anyway. I think he's fine. I know Joe's got some beef with him, but and the Italian press are going after him, but that's very Italian press. That's a norm for those. I think he'll get the first half of 2026, or even maybe the first third. Turn up. Have you got a race-winning car? If no, all those promises you made have kind of have fizzled out. Now, I think there's some interesting stuff at Mercedes. So obviously a lot of focus on George Russell and whether he's going to have a contract. I think my gut instinct now is that threat has passed and that he's probably going to remain. And today he did a decent overtake on Albon, settled into P5, and then I don't think we saw him again. I think the most interesting story coming out of Mercedes at the moment is Antonelli. So we've got Lewis Hamilton in and out of Mercedes hospitality. After every session seems to be going over to Antonelli, talking a lot in the press by hey, he's only 18. He's only 18. And a lot of people saying he's been kind of rushed into this position. I have been fairly limited on what I've been saying about Antonelli because he had that podium in Canada. He had the 3rd place when his teammate won. And he is a young driver and you don't want to be responsible for piling things on to a rookie. But people are now starting to say the things that I've gently been saying, which is that actually it's not going well. The results haven't been coming. There's definitely no superstar phenomenon story coming through, and people are starting to notice. And he was visibly upset. And the commentary now seems to be around, was he rushed into Formula One because of the Hamilton situation and Hamilton presumably wanting the kind of money he's on at Ferrari right now, and them going, no, this is our junior. This is our guy. This is the one. We're good. We're doing this. He's the new Senna and Verstappen rolled into one. And it doesn't look like it's going well. If he's in an understanding environment where there's low expectations, then why is he upset about things not going well? He obviously has higher expectations for himself. But I think we can start to say the unsayable now, Matt. Things aren't going well for Antonelli.
Well, they certainly didn't go super great for him today, but he was once again a victim of the wet setup. Plus, they put him on a 2-stop, which is going to lose all day long. That said, he did get a little bit of racing in, at least without crashing. So there's that. But I raise an interesting question here. I don't think they rushed him. I'm not going to blame Antonelli here. If I'm Mercedes and I see this regulation change coming up and I don't want to pay Lewis the money and I see he's got like whatever raw telemetry I look at, and I look at his raw telemetry, I'm like, that looks like Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton telemetry. Well, Max hardly set the world on fire at Toro Rosso the first couple of years he was there, and not even his first year at the Red Bull. So imagine if Max had skipped and gone right to the Red Bulls, it might have looked exactly like this, if not worse. I think the fundamental miscalculation here is they're like, well, bring him on, give him a whole year where there's like, we know the car is what it is. It's only going to do what it's going to do. We're not going to win anything with this car. And George can drive it competently enough to get to sort of keep our shareholders happy. So we give him just a year to bet in at the team rather than put him at Williams and then bring him up after a year. He has to relearn everything. Okay, fine, whatever. But I think what has happened is they have absolutely gotten wrong the fact that the team might not put those expectations on him. But the public and the media absolutely are going to put that expectation on him, and they will, and they cannot protect him from it. And there, I think that's a fundamental miscalculation on behalf of Mercedes.
Steve? Oh, you look like you were poised to say things. You don't have to.
I was listening to Matt's just argument and running it through my brain.
I switched off. Chat distracted me.
Yeah, that was the first mistake. You should never listen to more than 3 words I say.
I wonder if Matt made a good point. I don't know. I'll judge it by what Steve said.
Look, I think Antonelli has... I mean, sure, they brought him in and it's probably the right thing to do. It is a metric F-ton of pressure to put onto an 18-year-old who has come up through the junior series and not done a huge amount of them, and suddenly he's racing in, what is one of the top echelon Formula One teams. He deserves, a little bit of leniency this year, and everyone's saying, hey, let's judge whatever it is, Fred or whatever, in 2026. Well, I think the same thing also applies to Antonelli. I think that he deserves to be fostered, educated, looked after, and 2026 will be the year.
Everyone deserves that, Steve. Everyone. Look how
I can think of a few that don't.
Look how I brought Matt on. A simple writer. The only noise he could make was blowing through a trumpet. Yet in this last 11 years, we've raised him like a little chick being raised by a robot in the wilderness. I just watched Wild Robot. It's in my head. So yes, Antonelli is struggling. Someone said in the live chat he's doing great. No, he's not. No, he's not. I'm not saying whether he should be or not, or how much time would be needed, or whether he will be great in the future, because boy, I've been burned on this kind of thing in the past. I'm just saying right now he's not doing great. I don't think it's okay to say that. And the pressure is showing, the cracks are showing. The narrative is changing.
Again, but he's put in a position where he has to be judged on how he's doing because he's at Mercedes. And I do wonder if that was the fundamental miscalculation. Oh, it's the last year. It won't really matter what he does. Well, no, actually, it kind of matters a whole lot what he does. It is a tremendous amount of pressure. And I've seen, I wish I could remember the old Toro Rosso team principal say, look, it's 2 years. It takes 2 full years till you know what a driver's capable of when they come to Formula One.
I don't like it.
You don't like it, but that's what we're talking about. And he came with far less experience than most drivers have when they come to the sport. So you definitely want to give him that time, but they put him in a position where they may not be able to afford it to him. And this is an example. I was watching Formula One TV post-race show, and they raised a question. Well, is one of the reasons that Mercedes is struggling because, it was cold today.
Yeah.
And the car didn't do well. Normally, at least they do well when the temperatures are cold on track. They didn't. And they go, well, is that because they don't have the input of 2 experienced drivers? I mean, I don't think that's the case at all. I think fundamentally there's a problem with that car and they can't figure it out because their wind tunnel is incapable of giving them the data they need.
Are we saying Russell's inexperienced?
No, they're saying Russell is an experienced driver, but they don't have a second experienced driver to complement what he is telling them.
Okay.
Except Russell probably reckons he's worth 2.
Ooh, all right. Well, I'll let you fight that out in the chat.
You should back yourself. I think Russell's done well enough this season to back himself, and he is a driver on a $20 million a year contract at the moment, so he probably has pretty good reason to feel good about himself. Anyway, I think that's an evolving situation. Loads of the discussion in the chat saying, well, What about Piastri? He developed, later and has had his resurgence now in season 3 or whatever. But honestly, I don't want to be really harsh here. Antonelli's doing worse than Piastri in his first year. We were all on the Piastri hype train fairly early. He had quite a good start. I think it was quite encouraging. Yeah, they're saying Lewis, Schumacher, but there was more testing in those days. But
you cannot even, agreed. Yeah, the testing is just not the same.
Yeah, but the drivers you've come in recently, this is objectively a bad half of the season. It's a bad start. He might well have a great second half of the season. I'm just saying, if he'd have had a good start to the first half of the season, that would be better than what he's having now.
Yeah, but he's young and he just doesn't have the junior experience. People forget that.
Then don't have young drivers in. Go back to the olden days where you had to be 30 before you started. Damon Hill didn't start till he was 45. He was a granddad when he won his first world championship. No, he wasn't. But when I'm director of the FIA, when we take over, we're going to make the cars a lot simpler. We're going to make entries a lot cheaper. We're going to have 2 divisions of Formula One. We're going to have our Formula 1.5. And so there you've got a breeding ground where actually they're having to earn their position in F1. Forget the franchise. The franchises are out. We're going to have a full pyramid, and that pyramid will then breed drivers in full Formula One with their engines, with that same thing, but competing just in a division down. And when they get dragged up to Formula One, there'll be a finished article, because I hate it. I hate this. Oh, someone's got to come in and we've got to nurture them for 3 years at the pinnacle of sport. That doesn't happen in other sports. Other sports don't do that. They might get farmed.
You're going to get strung up by the teams to the nearest over-track gantry.
Yeah, but I'm going to... No, I know they want the franchise model because they can basically make $50-60 million a year, however well they do. So the franchise model is great for the teams right now. But like I say, I'm tearing it up. 2 divisions. That's what I want. All right. There's definitely other teams that we need to get onto. Oh, my goodness. We waffle even more when it's late at night / evening for Matt / morning for you, Steve. My goodness.
Yep, morning for me.
Let's go with, I want to compare, I think lastly, actually, the last things of note is Albon had an incredible qualifying P5 and a great result for Williams, Matt.
Yeah, he did. And it was really interesting to listen to him talk after the race, because he said, if you were to forgive us for the reliability, we fundamentally have a car that has showed up at every race capable of scoring points. Fundamentally, it's better. He did admit that it's not a great car in the wet. And I know a lot of people will be, oh, what about Carlos? Because we all love Carlos. He started from the pit lane and they changed him to a wet setup. And that explains everything that happened to him. So he started at the back of the field with the incorrect setup, and it never got any better for him after that.
Yeah, and then I think the other team is, there's a couple really. It's like Haas keep threatening to be amazing.
I was very angry. They were just late on their pit stops. First, they were late on their pit stops. Second, Ocon stop. They put him on 8-lap old mediums. They put him on the wrong tires.
What? Really?
Yes, 100%.
8 laps?
8-lap old mediums. They put him on used tires.
And if you look at it in Spa terms, that is like done mediums.
I thought it was a mistake, but then I saw in the radio messages, they're like, oh, we're sorry. And he's like, yeah, we just should have come in sooner and, maybe not put me on used tires. So there you go. Behrman looked
Did they
good.
have any news? Did they have any new of any sort?
They had new medium tires. Absolutely.
What?
They just grabbed the wrong set when they went out to the pit lane.
Stephen.
Oh, well, someone's head should roll for that.
So in the midfield now, we've got quite an interesting balance where Williams still somehow look like the strongest of the midfield teams, but you've got Stake, Haas, and VCARB, who are all capable of a result. And it's fascinating down there.
And Aston Martin, who aren't.
Yeah, no, Aston Martin. I'm not devastated about it. Yeah.
You mentioned Visa. Real quick, if you're an Isaac fan, you should know he had a power unit issue from about lap 8, and that's why they pitted Lawson ahead of him. and there was never going to be much they could do about that
interesting.
in the race. So that's why he finished so poorly.
It did seem like an uncharacteristically bad drop. I think they also pitted him late as well, so he was one of those that suffered from staying.
They
out
let
on
Lawson go first because he didn't have full engine power.
So
basically.
from Lawson's point of view, his season was a disaster, and now it's seeming like less of a disaster. He's stopped the bleeding, I think.
Yeah, I think he's sort of settled in and he's performing at the level he's capable of relative to Hadjar. And it's actually kind of a really good match. They're not far apart. And I hope that he settles down and sort of turns into the driver that he had the potential to be when he first subbed into this team for Ricciardo when he broke his hand.
He certainly looks a lot happier when you see him on the grid in the last 2 or 3 races. He was looking very depressed for a long time there. And I'm not a huge Lawson fan, but he is doing a reasonable job at the moment.
Just because he's a Kiwi.
Yes, he's a Kiwi, yeah.
Sorry, is this
Scott.
Like Scotland to Australia? Scotland to England,
Scott
then
Rainsford.
New Zealand to Australia? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much the same.
It took me way too long to realise that Lawson was a Kiwi and not an Aussie. So that's my confessional, but I'm fully on board now. A bit of a cheeky little late move against Hamilton. That could have been dangerous, but I don't think that's, it wasn't going to bother the stewards and it's not going to make any headlines. But I think Lawson is very aggressive. He's a very aggressive driver. And if and when we see him go up the grid a bit further, that is going to create a bit more headlines, I think, the way he drives. So the one thing, Steve, I know you don't know what social media is, but basically a lot of the teams put out like short content on these platforms where other people can then access them. VCarb wins the social media. I don't know if you've been tracking what they do with their TikToks and their Instagrams. But
I've just been tracking the people that they invite to their off-track events.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I suppose it is a coincidence that I've been hanging out with some of their media people and sponsors. And then I'm suddenly saying they're great. No, it is endearing. It's just cringe enough to be good. And they're just bad enough for acting to make it fun. And they just do loads of these little skits. And I can imagine the relationship that social media person has with those two drivers. It was the same with Tsunoda as well. I think when Tsunoda was there. But I think they're just doing a really good job connecting with a different demographic than the other teams. And by different demographic, I mean not us. Not this nearly the oldest available panel we have at Mr. Apex Podcast. We just need Christian here to be the demographic that VCarb is 100% not appealing to. And I'm
pensioners.
And I'm the youngest of the four that I just lumped into.
I mean, Hamilton and Button had a pretty good, PR kind of relationship back when they were both with McLaren. They used to put out those weird little animated cartoon things.
Oh, yeah. They were pretty good. Yeah, I remember
They were in their day. They were really good. I liked those.
All right. And there's me complaining about waffling on and then realising that I did nothing to stem the bleeding of that. So what I will say is that it is time to move on to the awards. Like I said in the intro, a testing weekend for the F1 viewer. Actually, I think the boringness of the sprint race was somewhat overblown. It was relatively comparable to an indoor kart track, watching Piastri have that one corner and that one straight where he could make a move and saying, well, could he do enough over the course of the lap to put himself in a position? I was watching it on replay, so I didn't watch it with other people, and I didn't watch it with the internet going, oh, this is boring, nothing's happening. So I don't know, I kind of got drawn into, can he do it before Norris catches up? And maybe because I had less information and I had less people telling me stuff and I had less lap times, I didn't see any of the live timing for that. I was just watching this kind of seesawing battle and going, oh, okay, maybe something will happen. Oh, no, it didn't. But I think reducing expectations for the sprint races, that's one thing. But secondly, need to have a real look at where the sprint races are. So apparently the next sprint race is Singapore. And you go, what's the point in that? Like, at the best of times, we don't get enough of a delta for racing there. I think they're doing the sprint races based on the tracks that have the big attendances. So the big marquee tracks, which Miami is included in now, which Spa, I'd imagine, is full, Silverstone. Those are the kind of tracks that rotate through getting the sprint weekend, because if you are at Miami, they really have a keen interest in activations and entertaining people. So they want that extra thing on the Saturday. And also part of it will be which promoters and which stadiums are willing to pay. I'd imagine there's some kind of deal. Isn't it part of the promoter's deal, whether or not you're going to have a sprint weekend? I'd imagine that is negotiated over. And just as I started warming to the sprints and going, actually, I look forward to the odd sprint race. Fair enough. That was one of the dullest sprint races out there. Just to put egg on my face. But it is time for our awards. So we're going to start with a bad award so that we can be super positive at the end and finish on the good award. So I'm going to ask the panel who missed the Apex.
No, you missed the Apex.
Stephen Amey. You don't have social media, but you do spell Stephen completely wrong. Stevan.
Evan.
I mean,
Yes,
it's
that's
bad
right.
enough when people spell it Stephen, but you've taken it to a whole nother level of wrongness.
Mate, half of Europe spells Stephen like that. You know,
What, Stephen? Yeah.
no, Stephen, Stevan is
No,
very European,
I-
very Eastern European.
You might be the only living Stev Ann. I think it's not worth researching. But
No, there's also a cinematographer in Hollywood who spells his name like that.
okay, Steve doesn't know what social
Interesting.
media is, so don't try and follow him. But you can
No.
chat along with him in our Patreon Discord. So patreon.com
Yeah,
/Missed Apex.
that.
Steve is there. There's all sorts of cool people in there, by the way. Not just me. We do hang out. It's very, very active in there. But Steve, who missed the Apex for you?
Oh, gee, this is difficult. We were just talking about it. I'm going to say that what missed the Apex for me was the sprint race. I love Spa as a track. It's one of my very, very favorite tracks. The sprint race is totally not suited to it. The track is too long. The overtaking opportunities aren't there. It's hard to make an exciting race. And why have a sprint race if it's just going to be boring? So the sprint race, I think, is what missed the Apex for me this weekend.
They should just make it longer so that you have to worry about time management. And
Okay,
also,
well, in that case, put it on Sunday.
yeah, I was going to say I'm busy on Saturdays, so if they could just put it on a Sunday, that would be great. Matt, two rumpets. You do have social media. You are at MattPT55 everywhere. As ever, links to our panel will be in the show notes and also links to our Patreon. Matt, who missed the Apex for you?
Well, this is an interesting one because of all we've been talking about. It's always tempting to say Aston on general principles, but I got to say Mercedes. They had favorable conditions and their car just absolutely did not deliver. And I'm not going to blame either of the drivers on it. They had a car that was lucky to finish fifth in today's race. And if you look at the lap times, yeah, I think Russell was easily 10 or 12 seconds back of Leclerc and Verstappen. And it just like they do not have a handle on this car after all these years. And I mean, that's just not great.
They've biffed the regulation set. There is no coming. There is no miracle coming over the hill. There's no cavalry. Ditching Mike Elliott straight away didn't fix it, and they haven't made any progress. In fact, they've steadily gone backwards in that top four.
Yeah, it's staggering. But the good news is I feel like the next regulation set will be a better one for them. So
you'd think that my Missed Apex award would go to the FIA or race control, but I really am irritated by the low bitrate on that drone footage, because like, how did no one spot that? How did no one look at that and go, oh, the car's going It's like, it was like 8-bit and it wasn't even good res as well. Like, how does that get past the production meeting? Sorry. But it is annoying. So I think it might even been a bandwidth issue. I'll help you guys. Right, okay, let's end on a positive then, as I ask for your Thing of the Weekend! All right, Steve. What was your Thing of the Weekend? Who hit the Apex for you?
Okay, well, given that I was always of the mind that Oscar was going to win and McLaren were going to be 1-2, I think that who hit the apex was Ferrari. I think they bought the new update and it worked pretty well, and Leclerc got a podium, so
You two.
I think they deserve it.
All right. Wow. Matt's nodding along. Right. Yeah, I disagree. Matt, who hit the apex for you?
Well, this is going to be a fun one. Oh no, but now I'm torn. I had a strategy one, but maybe I'm just going to pick Lewis in the first part of the race instead because, I had so much fun watching it. Oh, the ladies on the couch, they were giving snaps every time he made an overtake. It was, we were having a great time watching him take that brand new power unit and overpowered car and just carving through the back of the midfield in, difficult conditions.
Yep, and I'm going to give my Hit the Apex award to my man, Lauren Meckies. Justice for Yuki. 1 part down, 85 parts left. Justice for Yuki. Let's get him in the same spec of car and see what he can do. I'm not saying make him number 1 driver. I'm not saying we should ask Verstappen to move over and let Yuki do his thing. I'm just saying more of an equal shot because I do think Yuki is one of the most talented drivers on the grid. And now, hopefully, with all those parts, I'll get a chance to be proved right. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much to the support of my family for letting me yell into a microphone at 10 to 1. Although I don't know how angry they're going to be. I might walk out to like a mob of protests. Thank you to the live chat. It's been very busy. Quite a lot of people on the stream as well. Remember, you can subscribe to us on YouTube if you want to catch the stream live. We're close to hitting a landmark there, so please subscribe on YouTube. And if you are a podcast listener, one of the best things you can do for us is make sure that you're setting auto download, because then your download comes in at the right time to help us in the charts, whether or not you listen to it later in the week or immediately. And tell a friend that hanging out with Missed Apex is kind of okay. And I'm going to be doing more over race weekends now on our TikTok channels, posting more on Instagram as well. So follow all the links below. And I think Missed Apex can be part of your scrolls and your reels, as well as your podcast and YouTube F1 experience. Until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast. I do wonder how much trouble I'm in. Matt, can you text my wife? Just find out for me.
Yeah, hang on. I'm WhatsApping her right now.
Yeah. Oh no, what if your WhatsApp wakes her up?
I just don't open the door.
Remain indoors, I think is what you're saying.